Okay, welcome. This is a bit of a news flash, and we are going to be in just a few seconds chatting to Rachel Joyce, who is the co-president of the PTO, the Professional Triathletes Organisation. And if you've been living under a rock, quick one, they announced yesterday, big news from the PTO that they have a financial partner with a bit of coin behind him, and they have announced the Collins Cup will be taking place this year at the end of May. We've had a stack of questions come in, so we thought we would go straight to the co-president, Rachel Joyce. She's joining us from Boulder with her littlest one. We're both currently two mums trying to get work done with small humans interrupting us every second. So bear with us, but we're just keeping it real. This is how life goes for busy women within the sport. Joycey, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on behalf of the PTO, Steph. I've got my fingers crossed. Let's hope this works out. But it's great to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone's questions are and hoping I'm going to be able to answer them.
We'll give it a red hot crack. So we're just going to dive straight in. Let's just start with, I guess, the super obvious one. For those who don't know, what exactly is the PTO, and I guess what's your role within the PTO?
Well, you have to go back. It's been a long old journey to get to this point, and going back to Challenge Bahrain in 2014, and there was a really big group of professional athletes at Bahrain, and after we had the pro briefing, we were encouraged to try and organize ourselves and see. I think we're advised, if you can speak with one voice, then you can start having a little more power in the sport. So a group of us put our hands up and said, yeah, I'm willing to be on this board of athletes to try and see where we can get. And there was a really good momentum to begin with, and there was a lot of chatter and lots of ideas, but it faltered a bit and stalled after that initial momentum because we're all really busy and we didn't really have a direction to put all our energies. And then fast forward, so that was end of 2014, and then we all stayed in touch, and the group changed a bit, but the main people stayed in touch. And it was actually, and he's very much in the background, but a few of us were introduced to Charles Adamo, and he was introduced to me by Lucy Gossage, the British pro, and he was kind of trying to understand the sport, the economics of the sport, and how professionals made money. And he soon realized, a lot of us don't make very much money, and it's kind of a passion. It's almost like a passion project rather than a real professional really being able to kind of make a lot of money. So he kind of made it his project and stayed in touch with us as a board. And that's where the vision of, really wanted it to be a positive organization, not something, not a place to grumble about the existing status quo, but a place where the professionals could have a real vision for the sport and think of ways to make it a really a professional sport where the professionals really thrive rather than just kind of survive. And that's where, it was Charles's idea. He kind of came up with this Ryder Cup idea, and he put it towards the board. And the current board is, I'm co-president with Timothy O'Donnell, and then Benjamin's going to pipe up now. And then there's Meredith Kessler, Sarah Pimpiano, Scott DeFilippis, and Dylan McNeese. And we would bash these ideas around, and then Charles would go and, think about it. But was really looking for an investor that shared that vision for the sport, that pros are a real asset to the sport. really invest in the pros, that's a real opportunity to grow the sport rather than seeing them as a liability profit sheet. So that was what he took away when he was looking for someone to partner with the PTO. And that's very different to the existing situation in the sport. So it took time and there were a few false starts, but luckily for us, Charles stuck with it and we stuck with it and we kept circling back and came up with the concept of the Collins Cup and really very fortunate that Michael Moritz shared that vision for the sport, that the professionals are an asset to triathlon, and by investing in them, there's a real opportunity to grow the audience of the sport. Because really, until you have a sport that makes for compelling viewership, it's going to be very hard to break through to an audience that goes beyond those people participating in the sport.
Right. So in terms of growing the sport and the viewership, from my understanding, that's what the Collins Cup is all about. It's about pitting the best athletes against each other, and that being on TV, or what is the media role with the Collins Cup?
Well, it's the first time in triathlon, I mean, outside the Olympics, which the Olympics isn't necessarily, there are team aspects to it, but it's not a team sport. So this is where we're putting the regions together. So you have the USA versus Europe versus the internationals. And this is a real opportunity. Yes, we all have our favorite triathlete out there that we want to get behind when it comes to Kona, but this is you getting behind your region, and that's a real that's a critical, or that's an essential part of kind of making the sport appeal to a wider audience. Because of course, when I watch Kona, I know practically every pro and I know who I want to win and I know where the rivalries are. But if you're Joe Public tuning in, you have no idea what these rivalries are and who should be winning and who's the underdog. But if you flicked onto the Collins Cup, you know that you're in Europe, so you're going to get behind Team Europe, or if you're from the States, you're going to be Team USA. So that's a real opportunity to widen the audience, as well as it's going to be super exciting racing because you have 6 men, 6 women. So there's going to be so much racing going on. So you can flick between one race and everyone's performance impacts how the team performs. So the result won't be over until the last person crosses the line.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with that being said, one of the parts of the announcement was that over $2 million will be sunk into a prize purse at the Collins Cup. But a prize purse seems a little bit misleading because athletes don't actually win money based on that particular race. It's based on more of an appearance fee based on their ranking going into the Collins Cup. Is that a fair summation?
Yes. Yeah. So it's not prize money. You could almost say it's kind of performance-related payout because you get selected because you've performed well and you're a highly ranked athlete. Except for and then there's also the opportunity for people who don't race middle distance particularly frequently to be a captain's pick. And I think we can come on to that later, but that's another exciting element. You have the dark horses, and especially coming up now, we're in an Olympic year. So who are the captains going to pick? Could it be Nicholas Spirig? Could it be now my mind's gone blank, but there's a whole host of Olympians who maybe haven't qualified via the rankings, but they can come in and really shake things up. But you're right, it's not a prize purse. There's pride at stake. But it's a great honor, in our opinion, to be selected. You know, it's something we want people to really kind of pursue. You know, getting selected for the Collins Cup is a massive honor. I've educated myself in the past 3 or 4 years on other sports, and the Ryder Cup. You know that if a golfer gets selected for the Ryder Cup, they're not turning that down, because it's such a great honor to represent their region.
Yeah. And and I know nothing about golf. I have zero interest in golf. But I feel like that's just based on the questions that have come in, I feel like it's a real sticking point with people, and I think that's because we're so used to in triathlon, it's the prize money and the sponsorship money. That's always been the system or the structure in the way that athletes get paid. But obviously, you've had the top 35 men and women who have signed up for the PTO. Was that a sticking point in getting them across the line to sign up? And what were some of the other sticking points? Because I know it's been a long work in progress to, I guess, convince the athletes that this is definitely a direction to take.
Actually, that it wasn't prize money, that wasn't a sticking point. And I think actually the Collins Cup as a concept was something that excited most of the professionals that I got to speak to, because it's totally unique, and it's a chance to be in a team in what is otherwise a very individual sport. I think there wasn't a sticking point. We just had to work through. We were talking to over 100 individuals, and everyone's very passionate about the sport, and they all have similar but different visions for the sport. And it was making sure that there was a process and a structure in place where everyone would have the opportunity to put their voice forward and have their voice heard in how they would like the PTO to develop. Because yes, there's the prize money and there's the races, but there's also so many other issues in the sport where I think professionals have felt kind of a little like their hands are tied. They have no power to change it. Things like anti-doping policies, how to get an affordable travel insurance or health insurance. How do we look at setting up a good developmental path for athletes in the future? And that's not something that we can really do as individuals, but if we all gather together, we can start to make a change on those issues. But there are always going to be different opinions, and it's working out how people get to have their say and then have due process, so change going forward.
Yeah. And so you talked about trying to get pros on board and get them more involved in, I guess, decision making. One thing that came up a lot in the last 24 hours or less than 24 hours is a lot of professional athletes who aren't highly ranked didn't know anything about this and struggling to comprehend what's happening. Is there a reason why clearly not all the pros were aware of what was happening? And I'm just not just talking about the Collins Cup, I'm talking about the entire PTO.
I think manpower would be one reason. We definitely want this to be completely inclusive. There was a very practical reason for it. We had an investor who came on board, and we needed to show him that the professionals were capable of acting together. And so a condition of the partnership investment was that we could get the top 20 men and women to sign up to this membership agreement. So we wanted to get that investment. We weren't going to be going anywhere until we had that. So we really focused in on the athletes ranked in the top 50 to begin with, and especially the top 20. We, the board, and Charles and others, we're volunteering our time. We're not being paid. So it's actually quite difficult to even get the emails and contact details for the top 50 athletes.
Right.
And that's 100 people, and that's quite a lot of correspondence. And as soon as we wanted to get it off the ground, we didn't want to cast our net wider until we had something very firm to offer people, because people lose interest if something concrete doesn't come through. But now that we've announced, we have an email address, and we would love all pros to get in touch with us so that they can register their interest. And in the next 2 weeks, we will have a membership agreement that is downloadable on the website, so people can read it, sign up, and send it to us. And there's no other obligation. You don't have to pay any money to become a member of the PTO. We just want you to sign this membership agreement, and then you will get all the updates and be able to participate and volunteer or have a role as those roles come up. Can I give you the email address?
Yeah, do it.
For people to get in touch.
Yeah.
It's membership at protriathletes.org.
Okay, we'll add that in the comments section later on. One of the things that someone has just asked is, and you may not be able to answer this, but who hasn't signed up and why? A very obvious one is Sarah True tweeted this morning our time anyway, that she didn't know anything about it. So clearly she hasn't signed up.
Yeah, and I have actually been in touch with Sarah True because I will admit that I've been feeding Benjamin at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I get all these names of like, we need to get these people in touch before we announce, and it's no excuse, because obviously someone of Sarah True's stature and all that she can give to the sport and has already given, we want her to be a member, no doubt. And I don't want to make excuses, but I was we as a group were focusing on that. We used the PTO rankings as a way to kind of get the emails addresses, and it wasn't that we were excluding anyone, it was just we were focusing on that. And now I'm kind of kicking myself, it's not the Sarah True, there's so many names of people that, yes, we want you to be involved, and I'm sorry we haven't been in touch already, but please reach out, send an email to reach out to any one of the board members, or email that membership at protriathletes.org, and we will be in touch. We want you to be involved. So it was, I guess, manpower and focusing in to make sure we had those top PTO ranked athletes. And, the way rankings go, sometimes there's only 50 and there's some great athletes outside the top 50. There are some up and coming athletes outside the top 50, and we want everyone to be a member.
Okay, so ranking. How does the PTO ranking work, and do we have access? Well, I know we've got access to who is actually the top rank, but do we have access to how it works and how you move up and down, and when does the ranking?
You probably need a degree in mathematics and algorithms to know exactly how it works. We've got Torsten Rad, who he looks at every middle and long distance triathlon, and he ranks. I'll give in layman's term, he ranks the course and the time that is achieved on the course, and all races are weighted the same. So it's about your performance on a course. And I believe I think it's an 18-month. This is all set out on the website, and I'm sorry I don't know verbatim. I think a 2-year rolling, your top 4 or 5 performances count towards your ranking. And so it might be the 18 months. It's 2 years or 18 months, but it's a rolling time period. So your top performances will count towards your ranking. So if you have a bad race, that isn't going to move you down, because you're just your top 3 or 4. I should have been more prepared and read the exact, but it's all there on the website. And one of the things that we as a group thought was very important was that there is an injury clause. So if you are injured, you need to go to the website and follow the protocol on there and say, I'm injured. So that will allow you to count outside the usual. And there is also a maternity leave clause. So
that's my next question.
that existed in 2017. But it's great. So you know, there's no fighting to get back. You know, your performances pre-injury, pre maternity leave will count when you do make a comeback into the sport.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's impressive. And so those pros who, you know, we had a couple of comments this morning. How do I become ranked? Is this all happening in the background without people knowing, and then all of a sudden you're advised that you're in the top 50? Just while you answer as well, I'm quickly going to just throw Frankie in her cot with some books. So please just answer.
Yes, I will do. Thanks, Steph. So how it at the moment, if you go to the Collins Cup website or the PTO website, you will see the ranking. And at the moment, we have the top 50 men and the top 50 women. We have been rather busy in the last few weeks, and it is our intention to extend that ranking beyond the top 50, so that if you're in the top 75 or top 80, you know that you're getting close to the top 50. You're getting closer to be one of the top ranked athletes in your region coming up to the Collins Cup. So yes, we will be extending the rankings beyond the top 50. So keep checking in. That should happen, I think, in the next 2 weeks. Then in order to really, it's a little different from any ranking system that we've seen before. So, you know, I'm very familiar with the previous point system to get to Kona, which no longer exists, but you'd be looking at how many points you got in different races, how many points there were, and there was a weighting to those races. That's not how the PTO rankings work. All races are ranked the same. So really what you need to do is your job as a professional athlete and have really good performances. And if you perform well, you will improve your ranking. So that is it in a nutshell. And I think perhaps we should get Torsten on a podcast, because I can't do his. He's such a fan of the sport, and he puts so much time into the sport. I can't do justice to how much research he does in how he weights the course, but we wanted to make it so the Collins Cup will include both 70.3 specialists as well as Ironman specialists, and doesn't weight. So if you're one of those, you know, I was always lucky that I could perform in Kona, but some people hate the heat. It's their worst nightmare. Their ranking isn't going to kind of go down the Swanee just because they have a bad race in Kona, because Kona might not count as one of their ranking events. You know, if they perform really well in the cold, they should just go and race those races and really push their ranking up as high as possible.
Sorry for that interruption with small human.
I understand.
He's doing very well so far. Okay, so obviously there's a lot of eyes and a lot of questions about the Collins Cup, but I want to try and understand what else is happening outside of the Collins Cup, because obviously this is just one part of the entire PTO.
Yeah. It's a very important part, and because we need to nail it. It has to be a fantastic event with great broadcasting. It needs to be exciting. But you're right, it is just one aspect of the PTO. And it's also important because we have Michael Moritz and as a partner, Crankstart, as a joint investor. And it's important to the PTO that this is a success, because we half own this race. So when this race, we don't expect this race to be profitable immediately, but when it starts making a profit, the PTO is going to benefit from that. And that is something that has never happened before in triathlon. And I don't think it's really happened in any sport, but viewers, tell me I'm wrong on that. But yes, we have another agenda. One thing that has been really clear to me from a lot of the communications I've had from professionals is we want to be groundbreaking when it comes to our doping policy. We see so many sports are losing their legitimacy because people just don't believe what they're seeing. We own our own. We are the PTO, so we have an opportunity here to create our own doping policy, and this can be way stricter than anything that we see in other sports. And so one of the first things I think we'll be doing, we are extending our board to add 4 new members, but I think the first one of our first actions is to set up a committee. So if you're a member of the PTO and would like to volunteer, watch out. We'll be sending information about this soon. But there's an opportunity here for the committee to research how we could make our policy watertight so that we limit the possibility of doping as much as possible. Do we need to invest in more dope testing? What can we do? Do we want people to sign a different pledge? Do we want to have zero tolerance if someone is caught? These are all questions we want the committee to investigate and then present, and then we can create our very own policy, which I think is something we haven't seen in other sports either, but I think a real opportunity to stand out as a professional sport.
So that if and when that happens and a new doping policy is put into action, is that just in relation to the Collins Cup, or are you hoping to work with Ironman and Challenge? Or
we would love to work with all the players in the arena, and I think the thing that we bring to the table is we have the group, we have the professional group, we have the members. So in order to be a member of the PTO, in order to compete in in any PTO owned event or the Collins Cup and the Collins Cup, you will need to sign up to the doping policy that we eventually create. But yes, we would love to work with Ironman, with Challenge, and in developing this. And if they felt it was a policy that they would want to adopt, then that would be amazing. But we are here to elevate the sport of triathlon, and we all are fans of the existing players, and we want to work with them. This isn't a them or us. It's like, how can we all work together and make the sport better? And I think doping policies is a real opportunity to start doing that.
And that's obviously in our release that we put out along with everyone else, we sort of said that what we do know from the financial backer, Michael, is that $2 million is going into the Collins Cup, but obviously there's more money being invested in the PTO itself, and I assume that's where it's being directed with initiatives like the doping policies and other things that I'm sure will roll out over the coming sort of 12, 24 months.
Yes, yeah, we do have some budget, and then as events like the Collins Cup become revenue generating events, we will take 50% of that revenue. So that will only add to the budget that we have at the moment. So yes, we do have budget. That budget will increase in years to come, and there will be more announcements in the the coming weeks and months. So keep your ears to the ground. Although I'm hoping you do, like you said, if you like triathlon and you've missed the news today, then you're probably living in a bunker.
Yeah. So we've got a direct line to you, and if you're up in the middle of the night as well feeding, it's probably the perfect time for us to call you. So we'll just keep on the phone.
I must say that the midnight, early hours in the morning feeds have helped in being able to like talk to the people on the Europe side of things. Yes. Although now, Benjamin, I wouldn't mind if you started sleeping a bit more.
Yeah, now we're done. Can I have you still got a little bit more time up your sleeve?
Yeah.
Just let me know if you have to go. So you've talked about the profit from the Collins Cup and how that will go back into the PTO to then obviously spread out to all of its members. Profit, I assume, hopefully will be coming from sponsors of the event, advertisers, media. Is that the structure how it's going to work? Excuse my ignorance, but I assume that that's how it will work.
Yes, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. And I think what the PTO brings to the table, and I think this is what Michael Moritz and his group recognized, is that if we can get the professionals to unite and be a group, then there's a real opportunity. That is a very attractive, that having the top 50 men and women in any sport is a very attractive concept for a brand who might want to, get involved in sport that has, we all know the people participating in the sport at the moment are very similar to those, if going back to the old golf, with, I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but the average income of household is probably over $150,000. It's a very affluent audience, and so having a big group makes the professionals really a very, very valuable asset. Whereas when we're dispersed, it's impossible for an individual really. That there are the very top stars in the sport do get the non-endemic brands involved, but I've been second in the world twice, and I never got a non-endemic. So, but I think if you put the top athletes all together, that's a very attractive asset for any non-endemic looking to get into the sport. And you put that together with a very exciting race that pitches. The whole world is racing. That's a huge audience, and you start to increase the audience, then it's an attractive proposition, I think.
And that I assume that's how you see it helping and assisting, for want of a better term, the lower ranked athletes who aren't going to be qualifying for the Collins Cup or aren't in the immediate future going to be qualifying for the Collins Cup. But I guess in the long term, the goal is that it brings money to the sport that then filters down to those athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I use this too much, but Rome wasn't built in a day. But by really focusing on the stars in the sport, that's how we look to increase, bring money into the sport. And we've had a lot of discussion on the board and looking how we can develop athletes. We all know how hard it is, and for me, unfortunately, I won't be able to do the Collins Cup, participate. Those days have gone for me. But I think leaving the sport, I can see how much harder it is for up and comers coming into the sport now than it was, 10 years ago when I was getting into the sport. And I think everyone on the board and everyone in the sport recognizes that. And if we can do something, put a developmental path in, have developmental races where open it up. We don't know what it'll be, but there's so many different options on how that could be. But it is another priority, I think, of many of the athletes that I've spoken to. And also at the Collins Cup, yes, people won't be, maybe, only a very select group will be racing, but there will still be a professional race of the day after the Collins Cup. So I think that would be pretty awesome, because you can watch your team race on the Saturday, and then you still get to have your professional race on the Friday and make money from it.
Right. So okay. So those other ranked athletes.
But you see, this is it's crazy, because Sarah True, we all know that she's one of the best athletes out there. She came fourth in Kona. So even this is why I say there are very good athletes who weren't in the top 50 when we were getting the word out at the end of last year. So there are developing athletes and many very, very good athletes outside the top 50 that we want to be involved.
And in terms of involvement, though, it's their voice, but also, I guess, immediately they can expect support. So you're a central hub for particularly new pros, I guess, who are coming into the sport. Like you mentioned it very early on, in terms of looking at insurance for those pros, and I guess support from people who are in it and doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to what we can do immediately. This is the triathletes organization. So I'm hoping that people want to be an active part of the organization, because if you're relying on 6 or 8 people on the board to do everything, there's a limit to what they can do. So this is why we'll be looking for volunteers to spearhead different initiatives. And this is where we can really drive and make it a success. But it's really, this is the time for professionals to step up too. It's a partnership. We have to make this work. It's not going to be handed to us on a plate. So we need to create those stories about professionals. We need to create stories about the rivalries. If there's something that you really want to see happen in the sport, whether that is a mentorship program for new pros, send us an email, and that's something that you could head up. But it is the athletes organization. So we want to hear these ideas, and we want people to be involved.
And once again, we'll add the email address, which was the membership at protriathletesorganization.org.
Yeah. And they can contact me as well. I think my email address is rachel.joyce protriathletes.org, or anyone on the board. And we want to hear from people.
Right. We've also had a few non-pro triathletes, just people interested in sport, commenting, saying that they want to get involved. Are those people, volunteers, the people you want to be getting in contact as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the heartwarming things for me, and it kind of is what's special about the sport, and it's something that we don't want to lose, is that the professionals and the age group athletes really share courses, and kind of, you get, I know so many age groupers from races that have been my homestay hosts. And when the announcement went out, I've already had, I think, 2 people have emailed Tim and I saying, look, I'm an expert in, I'm a CPA accountant. Can I volunteer my services and help, and various things like that, which is, so nice to hear that people, the fans of the sport want to be involved in the PTO as well.
Right. I'm very aware that your little mate he's just about done, so I will wrap it up. But I just want to quickly ask you, which may not be a quick one, the response from, I guess, Ironman themselves, particularly because a couple of months ago it was announced that you had put a tender forward, or you had wanted to purchase Ironman and all of its assets. Where are you at with that, and how's Ironman's response been to this?
I'm going to. We have advisors on on that side of things, and really all focus has been on the PTO and the Collins Cup, and I've left, and the board has left all that to the people advising us on that. I haven't. I will be at the Endurance Exchange, as will Charles Adamo, Sam Renouf, and Scott De Philippis, amongst. I think there may be more at the Endurance Exchange, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with a lot of people in triathlon, wherever they work. So, anyone at Ironman, because I know these people. I've been on the Women for Tri board I was on the Women for Tri board for 3 years. And this is an opportunity for partnership rather than, yeah. I haven't heard directly from anyone from Ironman, but I think later this week will be a good opportunity to kind of connect with everyone in the industry.
Yeah.
At least in North America.
Yeah. Look, what we might do is see how this all plays out over the next week or so, and then I'd love to catch up with you again, see what the response has been, how many more people have signed up, and then I guess find out from a media point of view where else we sort of fit in with this kind of model as well. Because personally, I'd love to be at the Collins Cup to check it out and be involved.
Yes. Absolutely. That sounds great, Steph. I would love to.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I know that you're super busy with 2 small humans and all of this going on, but we will chat to you again soon.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Steph. Thank you.
Thank you.